Mr. White. His wood, you can see some of the bodies he's built, the woodies, the station wagons. He re-woods any kind of car that you could bring him. In fact, he has a pair of moons coming in sometime now, in August. He'll tackle anything. And sheet metal wise, he can reproduce just about anything early car wise, panel wise that you could imagine. So he's gonna thrill you for the next few hours.
I just done a 28 Nash Cabriolet. Them things were built out of 4x4s.
Still a chair. Whoa, sorry, Mark.
4x4 and 4x6s, and it was all. Well, the wood it was in it originally wasn't really oak; it was everything. But I built it all out of red oak, and I just glued and screwed it together until you made up what. Till you went out and bought that kind of stock, the guy that had a fortune in it. So the best thing to done, I glued it up. Anyway, I'm going to attempt to give you guys some ideas, and if, as I go along, if you got questions, just stop me and we'll keep it talking. I'm not as good a speaker as Craig. Craig's got a better line than I do.
Or BS.
But on probably the best thing when you're going to start a car, before you tear it apart or anything, is to get in there and take your upholstery out, and then get in there on the inside and take pictures of every piece that's in there. And then when you get your pictures back, take and match your pictures up to the piece, and then take each one out. A lot of times I'll take and even make a description of where I got it, why that was there, and why that notch was in it. Because you look at the piece of wood, and it's real important that when you're making the new piece, that you put all the cuts in the new piece that was in the original, because every piece that was in there for a reason. And you usually find out, well, oh, I don't need that. Wonder what they had that for. I bet that was a miscut or something. Then you get it bolted in the car, and you go to put the upholstery in or put a piece of metal on it, and you find out, well, now I need that cut. And then there you are with a wood chisel making it, you know. A lot of times, if I've got something that's a car that's got a lot of wood in it, I'll maybe just take one side of it apart and take that side out and start and do one side of it and see where I'm at. Instead of, because I've had 2 or 3 cars come in where guys they tore the whole car apart. They brought me everything in a bushel basket. In the first 3 months, you sit there trying to figure out what was wrong or what they done or where it went. And so if a guy's going to do one himself, the best thing to do is just take and do one side of the car at a time. And you get that pieces made, and you get the doors to open and shut, and then get out and work on the other side. But once you get the body off and you get the body work going, then probably the next most important thing is your frame. Like the Model Ts and the Model As are usually bent. And so then you build a nice straight body, and then you set it back on a frame, which I did here for a guy over in Delton last winter. I built him a new body, and he called me this spring, and he says, "Put that body on the frame." He said, "I've got her all bolted down." And he says, "This door here," he says, "comes back a good inch at the top." He said, "No way I can close that door." He says, I said, "Well, the door shut me first, didn't it?" "Oh, yeah." He says, "It's shut." I said, "Well, anyway, I'll be over." So anyway, I went over and took a look at it, and he said, "What do you think we ought to do?" And I said, "Well, first thing we're going to do, we're going to take the body back off the frame." "Well," he said, "I've been 2 weeks putting that on." I said, "Well, that don't make any difference." So we took it back off, and right where the motor sets is where most frames bend. And that thing had a 2-inch bend in it. So anyway, we took and we took the body off and we rolled it out, and it was lucky it had a nice big cement driveway and all. We put it right under the header of this building, and the building was 2-story with brick up above and a big steel beam going across there. And so we took and blocked the car, and I took and, whenever you're going to take and do a frame, you have to watch it, that the side rails aren't going like this. So you have to block everything across and keep them square. And we ended up, we jacked that, in the afternoon, we jacked that frame back up to where it was straight. What I've usually found is to check them is I take and use a bolt on each end and put a string between them, and then so you can take a jack, and they sprung down, they'll spring back up. You just keep a jacking them until they'll come right back up. Most everything that you'll find, everything works off a square. So once you get your frame straight and everything, and then the best place to build that body then is back on that frame. And if there's any wood blocks or anything that came out from under it, is make sure that them blocks are all back in and bolted down when you're starting to build the body back up. Like on the Model Ts and the Model As, the firewalls are plumb. So you start out with a plumb firewall, and you got a square frame, and you always have to make sure that the frame rails aren't leaning in or out. So that, and then what I usually do on these here, I take and I put all my body brackets on, and if the holes in the body brackets are say like 7/16, I ream them all out to 1/2 inch. Then I put a 1/2 inch bolt in to start them. Then that way when they go to the next guy, if there's a little variance in his frame or his firewall or something, he's got 1/8 of an inch that he can move his body. Then you start and unlike on the Model Ts, you start at the back and you work from the back to the front to build your body. This one here, on these type bodies, I know where every post goes, so I can start wherever I want to. But when I start to put it together then and put the sheet metal on, I'll start at the back and do all the back, then hang my doors and fit them to here. And then I'll put the sheet metals on this piece and that piece, and then get these doors to shut. And then do your front door and the insides of your seats, then it'd be your last fitting. Like on a lot of bodies, and I had some guys talking this morning that they had trouble with their doors to fit. Usually most doors, there's not much change in a door. Model A doors, you'll find that there's a lot of cracks and stuff in the corners of them. And like in your hinge posts and stuff, there's no change. And a lot of times the guys will be trying to shut their door, and there's always a gap at the body, like on the body down along the bottom here. And what I've found is it's not in the door itself, it's in the way you built the body. In other words, when you're tearing this body apart, a guy gets to get in there and get some measurements where the top is and where the bottom, how much width you got in the bottom. And because if that top of that body would be leaning out, say 1/8 of an inch up here, then you'd have a gap down here of about 3/8 on the bottom of that door. So if you can get that body to go in, a lot of times you'll find it on your open bodies that was all made out of steel, the T Roadsters and the Tourings and stuff like that. And you see a lot of guys' doors that are gapped at the bottom, and they've worked and worked and worked trying to twist that door. Well, that door, there's no way in the world to twist it. And all they had to do was pull the top of their body in 1/8 of an inch and right down here around the seat area, put some welds in there, and they got a perfect fitting door. like on the Model A doors, I'll take and, once I get the new wood in the Model A body, and get everything squared up, then I'll force that door shut. The first thing you do, then you get at and you look and see where every place that the door is cracked. And they crack around the hinges, they crack where that panel is where your window winder's at. And down along the bottom where it comes up around, it's cracked in there. Well, then I'll block that door shut and then get inside and do all your welding. Weld everything up, and then a lot of times then your door problems is pretty well solved. Like on the Model A doors, to line them up and down, you line them up with your shims underneath your body. There's two shims, one here and one up here at the front, and that there will adjust your door for the height going this way. I better look at my notes and see where I'm at. You know where I'm at?
You're doing great.
Good question.
Yeah, that guy got any questions, help me along here a little bit.
Why don't you show them how to spring a door?
You just did.
With
I mean up here? Well, a
the,
lot of times.
inside it with the turnbuckle.
Huh? Oh, some of the, you get a lot of these old Model T doors, and once the wood's out of them, they're real flimsy. When these were made originally, they made the wood, then they put it in a press, and then they pressed this over top of it. And that's the reason you got such a solid door. And I've got had some on guys' cars that was just so flimsy and stuff, and you got the wood back in them and they were still flimsy. And so then what I do, I'll put them on the body, and I'll put a turnbuckle in them, one of them just a little 25 seconds from here to here, whichever way I gotta pull it. And then once I get it pulled, then I'll take, you know that quick poly they sell? That two-part epoxy, they see it around the swap meets and stuff. And then I'll fill that whole inside of that door and conform make the wood and the metal all one piece. That stuff will harden up in about 3 minutes. You can take it off. We did it on Craig's 16 Touring. The doors were so ratty. A lot of places you can use it. These doors are usually all rusted out down along the bottom here. Well, you can make a piece and get it welded in there and stuff. Then after we get the wood in them, then I take duct tape and tape them all up, and then fill that clear full of epoxy. Then you never have to worry about the moisture ever getting down in there again to ever eat back out through, because 99% of your rust never comes from the outside of the body. It comes from the inside and works out. If you take these old cars apart, the big crater is always on the inside and the pinholes are on the outside, because all your moisture has come from the outside, or from the inside out. Then after when I do these here body panels, I usually fit them on the car in the same condition that they came off. A lot of guys will take them off and lay them out on the table and start and cut them all up and weld their new pieces and everything in. And then when you go to try to put them back on the body, they don't work. So what I've been doing, I get the body ready like this, then I put the sheet metal on, and then I cut all the old rotted part out, and then I fit the new panels on. And then that way you can get your curves and get them everything to conform. And then once you get them all tacked in place, then take them off and do all your welding. And then after you got them all welded and straightened and everything, then put them on the car. And once you get your old body then all done, then if you got any fiberglass in or lead, then do that the last thing after the body's all together. If you get to doing any fiberglass on the outside or any leading, and then these panels all fit so tight that you got to pop them on. So you use a screwdriver or a bar or something to get them on. Well, you know what happens when you bend them with a little bit of fiberglass, that it's cracked, and then you got to grind it out and start all over. So the best thing to do is finish the insides of them. If you're going to put any lead or anything in there or fiberglass, do that. And then I usually paint them and then undercoat them. And then put them on, and then you can do your outside work. I run out again, Craig.
How about the big door? How do you get the panels on it?
This in here is off of well, I guess it's about a 23 to 25 Ford two-door sedan. And, I've been working on this thing for about 2 years off and on. There's 2 tons of lumber in it. I had some pretty good patterns. I've got the body basically all together, and you fit this stuff all about the same way as you would a Model A. You be real careful with your dimensions and your cuts and stuff wherever's a cut for anything, like here for your door latches. And then there's a panel that will fit in here that your window winder goes in. And really there's not much to it. Your trim goes around here, holds your glass in. You put your felt channel. There's some blocks that you put in down in here that to hold the window when it goes down. It's basically the same as a metal door, but everything's wood.
Is that open? No.
This here, most of it's maple. This here I use printer all red oak, ash. I usually use poplar in the seats and then the floor pans on T-roadsters on your decks. I put poplar there because the water will never damage it. Like when you're fitting in, talking about water, when you're fitting in Model A wood and in your top wood, or any of your cars that uses wood in the tops. As you're fitting that in, a guy should first of all paint always wood with like sanding sealer. And that'll seal out the moisture, and put a couple coats of paint on that, or the sanding sealer. And then when I take and put that wood up in there, I take and use some caulking. Then I embed the wood into the caulking. And then in between the metal, where like on the Model A's they come up around and roll over, I use what I want to say. The filler that they use for seam sealer. You know, you can buy it in a can, it's like black putty. I'll take that seam sealer and put that all the way around, then nail the wood down to that. And then use some seam sealer or caulking on anything that's where the seams are going to be, and then put your top on. And as you're putting that top on, always taking glue all the way around that. Usually if you get a kit, they come with like an airplane glue or something. And you glue that all the way around, and then you glue your welt too. Because there's nothing any worse than you get your car all done in the first rainstorm, you got a big yellow stain on your upholstery.
What's the reason for the caulking and seam sealer?
To keep the water out. In other words,
the joints.
Yeah. On all these wood bodies that I build, all the joints it's got sanding sealer. You can buy it at any hardware store. It's a liquid. And just paint all the wood up with it. Any place you got two pieces of wood got to go together, and that way you never, like on red oak, if you get a little bit of moisture in it, you got a circle in it underneath your polyurethane, you know. So if you use that sanding sealer, you can take and you never get that. You can't use it if you're going to glue it, you know. But if you just got two pieces that's got a butt up there, or if it's underneath a hinge or something, then you can put your polyurethane on top of that. Yeah.
What kind of glue do you use?
I just use the carpenter glue, the yellow. I've never had anything come apart, and I've had stuff that I've purposely set it out in the, you know, let it got wet to see what would happen to it. You can buy hide glues and stuff, but the printer, everything that I've used, I use just plain Elmer's glue for the yellow.
One thing I found, you have to watch yourself, and I know I've got into a mess one time. I figured, well, I might as well glue every joint. But the joint wasn't glued originally. It's not a good idea to do it because they left them loose to take
So
the stress and the shift to the body. And I've had some sheet metal crack on me, and the wood just bust because I did that. It's
A lot of the older bodies were mortise and tenon together too, and the reason for that was that they were when the body swelled, everything swelled. When it dried, everything dried. You didn't get no swelling in your joints. They would hold it better that way. That truck that I built there, I mortise and tenoned that together, 20 years ago, and where it was varnished, it's never cracked even in there. So when the thing swells up, it all swells and everything goes back together. Where on some of the other bodies where you've glued and stuff, and then they swell, and then you'll see that little ridge right where you joined everything. But on that truck, even the bed of it, I mortise and tenoned it. I did that about 25 years ago. It sits there in the garage, no heat or nothing. You can go out there and you can see the pegs is swelled just a little bit, and the joints are swelled in the spring of the year, and go out in the summertime and rub your hand over it, and the thing's all nice and smooth again when it gets dry.
Is there any difference between the red oak and white oak, other than price? Weight-wise?
There's not even much difference in the price. I don't know, red oak is kind of, if you're doing a job for a guy, the first thing he asks is if you're using red oak. Red oak's a little more expensive, not that much. Red oak cuts a little better than the white oak. White oak's a little harder to cut. Hard maple's hard to cut. The soft maple, you may as well print or use pine. I try to, when I'm doing doors, I use white ash. I don't seem to get as much splitting when you're, these pieces here, down in here, with these fits, there's only about once you get the notches and stuff put in, you got less than 1/4 of an inch of stock left. And so the best thing to do is, sometimes I'll take and glue them, but usually when these doors go together, then I quick poly the bottom of them anyway, so you don't have to worry about them busting or breaking or anything on here. Whenever you're going to, like if you're going to do a 2-door sedan body or something, a lot of times I'll take and put some layout marks down the center, and a couple of them up underneath the seats here to use them for reference points. I'll try to put anything on the frame that I can and have some measurements. So when you're putting that sucker back together, I don't care how good a memory you are. Mine's the worst in the world. You go to put that thing back together, you wonder, did that piece ever go in there originally? Or how did it go in there? And a lot of times, I know I built a 23 coupe, and it was one of the first two-door bodies that I'd done. And so anyway, I got in there and I took all the wood out and I marked it all and I laid it all out. Somewhere along the line, the top pieces got mixed up. And I put that body all together, and I had it on a jig on an old frame. And the doors would close perfect until I put the roof on. You bolt the roof on, hell, them doors wouldn't come within an inch and a half. And so my first thought to do, well, you know, maybe I ought to cut this and do that, you know. So every day I'd come home from work and I'd work on that thing a little bit. And one day I thought, well, I think it's just got the best of me. I think I better work on something else that I know a little bit about. There was some sledgehammer work there that needed done, and some pieces needed straightened. And so I had it on a roller and I rolled it over in the corner of the garage and I left it there. And I had to lift the door on my garage, and it went on for 3 or 4 weeks. I come home one day and I opened up the garage door and I'm just sitting there in the truck looking in there and looking at that thing. I got to looking at it and I says, there, I know what's wrong with them doors. The pieces on the tops of the doors was cut on a camber like this. And the camber that I needed back up here was back there. I took them 2 pieces off, and at that time I had my shop in the cellar. I went down in there and I made new pieces, and by the time she come home from work, the doors was opening and closing, and after 3 or 4 weeks of aggravation, man, was I happy. Just one little thing, you know, and you can work for hours and hours and hours trying to figure it out. That's like on these doors here too. It's important if you come up and look, and I have long straight edges that I use, and these here bodies have to have a straight line from the door to the back. If you've ever